What would you do if someone tried to erase your entire life story in front of your family? At our uncle's retirement party, my cousin Ari manipulated everyone, taking credit for my achievements and even showing Gran my doctored version of my internship letter. The shocking confrontation that followed exposed betrayal, lies, and the length someone would go to steal an identity. What happens next will shock you. I never thought I'd be writing something like this, but here I am. Our family owns a small but successful catering company. It's not some huge corporation, but it's ours. My dad started it when I was a kid and when you were married, and my stepsister eventually got involved too. For a while, it actually worked. She had good ideas, and I thought maybe having her on board would take some of the pressure off me. But things changed fast. At first, it was little stuff. Emma would step into meetings that she wasn't supposed to be in, like discussions I was having with Dad about contracts or payroll. She'd sit there smiling like she was just learning, but then she'd chime in with her own opinions and twist the entire direction of the conversation. I brushed it off because, family. You don't want to start a war over small things. Then one Friday afternoon, I walked into the office to find Emma in my chair. Not just sitting there waiting for me, she was going through my files. Literally, my drawer was open, paper spread across the desk. What are you doing? I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. Emma didn't even look guilty. She just said, "Oh, I was checking the vendor contracts. I think we're overpaying for produce." I froze. Those contracts are my responsibility, and she knew it. Dad had assigned me to handle supplies years ago. You had no right to go through my stuff, I told her. She rolled her eyes like I was being dramatic. Relax, it's all for the good of the business. That phrase, for the good of the business, started haunting me. Every time she crossed the line, she used it like a shield. The real breaking point came during a client meeting. We had a huge wedding contract on the line, and I was the one leading the pitch. I prepped for weeks. Dad was there, and I was supposed to just sit quietly and observe. But halfway through, she cut me off mid-sentence and started talking over me. "Actually," she said, smiling at the couple, "we can do all of this for 10% less than what my sister just quoted you." I swear my blood went cold. She wasn't even supposed to speak. And now she'd undercut me in front of clients, essentially making me look like a liar or a scammer. The couple looked confused. Dad looked stunned. I sat there in silence, fist clenched under the table, while Emma kept rumbling about discounts we hadn't agreed on. After the meeting, I cornered her in the hallway. "What the hell was that? You just promised them a discount that doesn't exist." She smirked. "It does now, you're welcome." I wanted to scream. Instead, I stormed out before I said something I couldn't take back. That night, I couldn't sleep. My trust in Emma, what little was left, was shattered. And worse, I had no idea if Ted was going to back me up or her. The next morning, I came into the office with this pit in my stomach. The wedding clients hadn't signed the contract yet, and I knew that the discount Emma threw out could sink our margins. I wanted to talk to Dad privately, but Emma was already sitting in his office, coffee in hand, acting like she owned the place. I knocked on the door frame. "Dad, can we talk?" He looked up from his desk. "Sure, come in." Emma stayed seated. I hesitated. "Alone," I added. She gave me this offended gasp, like I'd just told her she wasn't family. Dad frowned, but eventually nodded. "Emma, give us a minute." She got up slowly, shooting me this look half smug, half wounded that made my skin crawl. As soon as the door closed, I let it out. "Dad, she crossed the line yesterday. You saw it, that discount. We can't afford it, and the way she just took over, it's disrespectful. To me and to the whole system we built here." Dad rubbed his temples. I know, but Emma's just enthusiastic. She wants to contribute." "Contribute?" I nearly laughed. "She's sabotaging me. You gave me responsibility for suppliers, for client pitches. She's steamrolling boundaries you set yourself." He sighed, clearly torn. "I'll talk to her. Just try to be patient." That word patient hit me like a slap. I'd been patient for months while Emma chipped away at everything I'd built. Later that afternoon, my cousin Mark, who helps out in the kitchen, pulled me aside. "Hey, just so you know, Emma's been talking to some of the staff about making changes. She's saying you're too stuck in your ways." My jaw dropped. "She said that?" He nodded. "Yeah, some people are starting to wonder who's actually in charge." I felt my face burn. It wasn't just about me anymore. Emma was poisoning the well, undermining me to the very people I worked my ass off to lead. That night at family dinner, things blew up. Mom, my stepmom, Emma's mother, was all smiles chatting about vacation plans when Emma casually brought up the wedding contract in front of everyone. "I think we should all agree to more flexible pricing," she said, stabbing her fork into a piece of chicken. "Clients love it, and honestly, I don't think rigid numbers are working anymore." I slammed my fork down. "Stop, just stop. You don't get to write how this business works at a dinner table." Mom froze. Dad looked uncomfortable. Emma just tilted her head like I was the crazy one. "Why are you being so territorial?" she asked sweetly. "It's not just your business, it's family." The air went ice-cold. I shot back. "Family doesn't mean you get to ransack my files, trash my reputation, and hijack contracts. Family means respect, and you've shown me none." Dad muttered, "That's enough, both of you." But his voice sounded weaker than ever. I realized then, this wasn't just Emma crossing lines. This was the beginning of a battle for control, and my own father might not be strong enough to stop it. The next morning, I got a call from the wedding clients. Their tone was polite, but there was the subtle edge, the kind that makes you immediately uneasy. "We just wanted to confirm the details for the wedding next month," the bride said. "Emma mentioned a discount, is that right?" My stomach dropped. I had to correct the misinformation, but I knew doing so would make Emma look like the villain and by extension, put me in an awkward spot with Dad. Actually, I said carefully, the discount she mentioned wasn't something we could approve. I want to make sure we were all clear on the final price. There was silence on the line. Then a sigh. Oh, okay, thanks for clarifying. I hung up, my hand shaking. This was bigger than I thought. Emma had crossed a professional line that could hurt our reputation and my credibility irreparably. I confronted her immediately, catching her outside the kitchen where she was chatting with Mark and a few other staff members. Emma, we need to talk, now. She smirked. About what? I already handled the wedding stuff. No, you didn't. You misrepresented our business. You're not supposed to promise discounts or change contracts without consulting me or Dad. That's basic. Mark looked uncomfortable, glancing between us. Some of the kitchen staff were listening too. Emma shrugged. Relax, everyone thinks I'm helping. You suck tight about everything. Helping? You're actively sabotaging me and our family business. I shouted. Do you even understand how this looks? Dad trusted me with the clients, and you just waltz in and wreck that trust? She rolled her eyes. Dad doesn't care who does what. He wants results. Then I'm delivering them. The words hit me like a punch. Delivering results. At the cost of honesty, boundaries, and trust. I swallowed hard. This isn't about results. It's about respect, and you've broken mine. Emma didn't respond. She just stared at me, her lips tight, before walking away without another word. Later, that evening, I cornered Dad in his office. We need to fix this, and we can't just operate independently in the business. She's crossing every boundary I've set. If this keeps going, clients will lose faith in us, and so will the staff. Dad sighed deeply. I see that now. I didn't realize how far it had gone. I'm not asking for favoritism, I said. I'm asking for basic rules. She can't just do whatever she wants. It's breaking trust. Not just mine, but everyone's who works here. He nodded slowly. You're right, I'll handle it. I'll make it clear that certain responsibilities belong to you. Emma will have to respect that. Relief washed over me, but it was bittersweet. I knew Emma would push back. She'd always push boundaries when she felt slighted or overlooked. And I also knew his confrontation had changed things between us forever. That night, I stayed late in the office, going over contracts and client notes, double-checking every little detail. I couldn't let Emma's actions undo everything my family and I had worked for. And deep down, I realized the battle wasn't just about contracts or discounts. It was about trust, and once it's broken, it's never quite the same. The next week was tense. Emma was quieter than usual, but there was this simmering intensity in her eyes that made me uneasy. I could tell she was plotting something small, petty, but calculated. It started with minor things at first. Files on my desk would be slightly moved, emails I hadn't sent would appear as read in the system, and staff members would whisper about changes she claimed to have suggested. Each incident was small enough that I could dismiss it, but cumulatively, it was infuriating. Then came the Thursday morning meeting. Dad, Mom, Emma, Mark, and I were all sitting around the conference table. I was presenting updates on an upcoming corporate event when Emma interrupted me again. I think we should scrap the menu options Emily suggested, she said casually. I froze mid-sentence. Excuse me? I asked, my voice tight. Those options were finalised with the client. You don't get to override them without consulting me with them. Emma leaned back in her chair, smiling like I was overreacting. I'm just trying to be proactive, you know, thinking ahead. Dad frowned, glancing between us. Emma, let's hear Emily out first. Emma huffed and crossed her arms. Fine, but don't say I didn't try to help. I tried to stay calm, explaining why the original menu was essential, down to dietary restrictions and catering logistics. Emma interrupted me twice more, offering alternatives that were not only unnecessary, but potentially disastrous. The staff in the room exchanged uneasy looks, and I could see Mark silently shaking his head. Finally, I slammed my hand on the table. Enough, Emma, this isn't a game. You're not above the rules of this business just because you're family. Mom gasped softly, and Dad raised a hand, motioning for me to calm down. But I couldn't. I had reached the edge of my patience. Emma's smirk faltered, replaced by a flash of anger. You think you're the only one who knows how to run this place? Maybe if you weren't so controlling, we'd actually get somewhere. Mark cleared his throat. Or maybe we should all take a step back before this gets worse. Dad leaned forward, pinching the bridge of his nose. Emma, I warned you. Emily's responsible for these accounts. You need to respect that. No more overstepping, period. For the first time, I saw hesitation in Emma. Her eyes narrowed, but she didn't respond verbally. She just got up and left the room with this cold stare that made my chest tighten. After the meeting, I stayed behind with Dad. I can't keep doing this if she doesn't respect boundaries, I admitted quietly. He nodded slowly. I know, I'll talk to her tonight. We need to set rules, clear rules before this destroys everything. That night, the tension in the house was palpable. Emma barely spoke at dinner, and every glance between her and me felt like a silent challenge. I knew this wouldn't end with one conversation. She was stubborn, manipulative, and dangerously persuasive with people around her. I went to bed that night with a sinking feeling. Trust between us was fractured, and it was only a matter of time before the next incident tested how far I could go without completely snapping. This wasn't just about the business anymore. It was about family, loyalty, and finally drawing a line that couldn't be crossed. The next morning, the tension hit a breaking point. Anna had emailed some of our long-term clients directly pitching a new package deal she created without consulting anyone. One of the clients called me immediately, confused and frustrated. Emily, we're not sure which quote is correct, the client said. Emma sent us a completely different one. I felt my stomach drop. I could hear the disappointment in their voice. I'm so sorry, that was a mistake. Let me clarify everything right away. After I got off the phone, I stormed into the office, where Emma was laughing with Mark over some spreadsheet. My hands were shaking with anger. Emma, I yelled. This stops now. You sent clients conflicting quotes. Do you even understand the chaos you're causing? She looked up, unfazed. I thought I was helping. They seemed interested in the new package. Helping? You're ruining everything. Contracts, pricing, deadlines, you're undermining me and the entire team. I could barely breathe, my chest tightening. Mark looked down, clearly uncomfortable. Maybe we should just calm down. Look? I snapped. You all see it. She doesn't respect boundaries. She keeps overstepping, and now it's affecting real clients, real money, real trust. Emma's expression shifted. I could see the smugness faltering, replaced by a hint of panic. You're overreacting, she said, though her voice wavered. Dad appeared in the doorway, his face drawn tight. Enough, both of you. Emily's right. Emma, this behaviour ends now. You're no longer allowed to contact clients directly without supervision. You will respect Emily's responsibilities in the business. Do you understand? Emma's lips pressed into a thin line. I get it. Good, Dad said, his tone leaving no room for argument. We can rebuild trust, but this is non-negotiable. Emma muttered something under her breath as she slumped back into her chair, clearly not happy but realising there was no escape. I sat down heavily, my hands trembling. I can't believe it had to come to this, I whispered. Dad put a hand on my shoulder. It's not ideal, but boundaries exist for a reason. This isn't about punishing her, it's about keeping the business and our family intact. Later, when Emma had left the office for the day, Mark came over quietly. You handled it well. Honestly, a lot of people were ready for a full-blown disaster. I nodded, but I couldn't shake the exhaustion. Emma had pushed every limit I thought existed, and while the rules were now clear, the emotional damage was real. Trust had been broken, and I wasn't sure it could ever be fully restored. That evening, I sat in the empty office looking over the client files. I realised something fundamental. Running a family business isn't just about numbers and schedules. It's about relationships between clients, staff, and family. And once trust is broken, even with someone you call family, it takes a long time to repair if it ever can. I made a silent vow to protect both the business and myself, no matter how messy the path might get. Emma may have crossed the line, but I wasn't going to let her undo everything I'd worked for. The following week felt like walking on a tightrope. Emma kept her distance, but there was this underlying tension, like a storm about to break. I knew she was capable of one last attempt to manipulate the situation, and I wasn't about to let my guard down. It started subtly. She'd make casual comments to Dad in passing, suggesting minor adjustments to operation. At first, Dad would nod politely, but I could see the hesitation in his eyes. Emma was testing boundaries again, seeing if I would push back or if he might side with her. Then came Thursday morning, the final push. She called an emergency staff meeting while I was in the kitchen prepping orders, claiming there was a critical scheduling conflict. When I arrived, she had gathered half the team and was laying out a completely new schedule without consulting me. Emma, wait! I shouted, stepping into the room. You don't get to do this. These schedules were approved last week. You can't just change everything on a whim. A few staff members looked uncomfortable, glancing between us. Mark stepped forward. Maybe we should just hear her out. No, Mark, I said firmly. This isn't up for discussion. Emma has crossed enough lines. Emma's eyes flashed with irritation. You're so controlling. Maybe if you trusted me, we'd actually get things done. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. Trust isn't given freely. You've broken it too many times. This is about accountability, not control. You are not allowed to change schedules or make decisions that affect the staff without approval, period. For a moment, the room was silent. Emma looked around at the staff, probably hoping for support, but they all avoided her gaze. Even Mark gave me a small nod. Dad walked in then, his expression serious. Emma, this ends now. Emily is responsible for schedules and client coordination. You will respect that. No exceptions. Do you understand? Emma's jaw tightened. She didn't speak at first. Then, in a low voice, she muttered, Fine, I get it. It wasn't the proud victory I wanted, it was more like a cautious truce, but it was enough. The staff quietly resumed their work, and Emma retreated to her office without further incident. Later that evening, I sat down with Dad in the empty office. I know this is messy, but thank you for stepping in, I said softly. He nodded. I should have done it sooner. I didn't realise how far it had gone. I hope this helps restore some trust between you two. I managed a small smile. It's a start, but rebuilding trust, that's on both of us. She needs to learn boundaries, and I need to be firm. That night, I stayed late organising client files and reviewing schedules. Emma hadn't caused chaos today, but I couldn't let my guard down. Family dynamics were complicated, and mixing them with business was a recipe for tension. Still, for the first time in weeks, I felt a glimmer of relief. The lines had been drawn. Emma understood, at least for now, that crossing boundaries wasn't acceptable. The trust was fragile, but it was a start. I leaned back in my chair, letting out a long sigh. The business was safe, and I had protected my role in it. The road ahead with Emma would be challenging, but at least now I knew the limits, and I wouldn't let anyone, even family, cross them again. The following week, things finally began to settle, at least on the surface. Emma was quieter in the office, sticking strictly to tasks that didn't interfere with mine. I kept a close eye, but it felt like a fragile ceasefire had been established. The staff seemed relieved, and even Mark smiled more freely when I walked past. One afternoon, Dad called me into his office. Emily, I think Emma and I need to have a proper talk about boundaries together. I want to make sure this never spirals again. I agreed. When Emma arrived, she looked tense but composed. Dad started calmly. Emma, we've talked about how important it is for Emily to manage her responsibilities. You've got your own role, but certain areas are hers, and that needs to be respected. Emma's shoulders slumped slightly. I understand. I didn't mean to cause so much trouble. I just thought I was helping. I get that, I said, trying to keep my tone neutral. But helping doesn't mean overstepping. We all want the business to succeed, but trust has to be mutual. There was a long pause. Emma nodded, finally meeting my eyes. You're right. I let my enthusiasm get the better of me. I'll follow the rules from now on. It wasn't perfect, and I could still sense a flicker of stubbornness in her, but it was the first real acknowledgement I'd seen from her in weeks. After the meeting, Dad pulled me aside. You did good. This could have gone much worse, but you were firm, and that's what mattered. I smiled, exhausted but relieved. Thanks. That's just hard. Family and business don't mix well sometimes. Dad nodded knowingly. That's true, but boundaries and trust can protect both. It won't be perfect, but it's a start. Over the next few days, I noticed a subtle shift in Emma's behaviour. She was professional, contributing ideas when asked and not interfering in my responsibilities. I even saw her quietly helping Mark with inventory without making it a big deal. It wasn't full reconciliation, our relationship was still tense, but at least there was a baseline of respect. One evening, I stayed late in the office, reflecting on everything that had happened. The fear of losing control, the anger, the frustration of seeing Emma cross line after line 8 had been exhausting. But facing it head on, drawing clear boundaries, and getting Dad's support had made all the difference. I realized that running a family business required more than skills or experience. It demanded patience, communication, and the courage to confront issues before they became disasters. Emma's boundary crossing had shaken me, but it had also taught me something invaluable. Being firm in protecting my role wasn't being selfish, it was being responsible. By the end of the week, the office felt lighter. Clients were happy, staff morale improved, and Emma was finally staying within her lane. Trust wasn't fully restored, but it was possible to rebuild it slowly with rules and respect guiding the way. I knew there would be challenges ahead, but for the first time in weeks, I felt a sense of control again. I had defended my role, enforced boundaries, and kept the business and myself intact. And that, I realized, was the most important victory of all.